Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Atticus Partners podcast. This afternoon, we're very, very pleased to be joined by Giles Watling, Conservative MP for Clacton, for this conversation,
It's a delight to be here.
Well, thank you very much for being here today. And you know, Giles and I have gone back a few years because we did some fascinating campaigns, or campaign in particular, which we might get onto later. But firstly, Giles, we've also both this afternoon, been watching the autumn statement from Jeremy Hunt. Give me your overall view of what he proposed, what he announced, and importantly, do you think it will be enough to ensure the Conservatives win next year?
Well, nobody can say what's going to ensure a Conservative win next year, but I have to say that I think everything's worth playing for, and nobody must ever be complacent, because I think, from my personal point of view, that a Labour victory next year would just be disaster for the country. But what Jeremy Hunt laid out today, I think, was extraordinary and very, very proactive. So he dealt with tax cuts, no surprises, because we knew that was going to come. But he took 27 million people out of NHS payments, which is a massive thing to do. And then he offered a lot of help for SMEs, which is important, particularly in my constituency. I have SMEs that are struggling with business rates, etc. And then he did a big thing on cutting the business rates, you might have spotted, for small enterprises. And then he's made the tax situation better for big business, which is going to encourage some 20 billion of investment into industry in this country. I mean, these are really bold and terrific moves. The other thing he did say, which I think is really important to my constituents, is he guaranteed the triple lock on pensions. Not only did he do that, he then upped the pension by 8.5%, which I think is really important, because we've got to look after the people who, after all, have given this country wealth over their lifetimes, and they've paid into the pension pot, and they should not be denied that benefit at the end of their working life.
Do you think that? Do you think it was a bit of a U-turn though, overall? Because just a few weeks ago, or for several months, Rishi Sunak has been talking about the fact we can't cut taxes or anything. The economy's not in good enough shape. And then a few weeks ago, he was talking about, he was having a bit of a go at the old forces and the like. And we've got the highest tax rate in the for decades. And then, maybe that explains why he suddenly cut taxes.
Well,
it
Charlie,
a bit of a U-turn, flip-flop.
If you were listening to the statement, and I think you were, you will have heard that the Chancellor said, and absolutely rightly, when possible, when we can, we will make these tax cuts. And it's not been possible hitherto, because apart from having the sort of the biggest depression in 2010, whatever, the famous quote that there's no money left. And we did extraordinarily well. Then we got hit by a pandemic, and then a war in Ukraine, and all these issues have sort of set back ordinary economic activity. And now, at this statement, and decisions the Chancellor made absolutely today, as he looked at the numbers, it's a point that we've come to, so he can make those cuts, and he made absolutely clear how we can afford them because of the growth.
So it feels to me like, though, even though things are a little better economically, we are at the end of the day looking at an election next year. So is this just the beginnings of the great election giveaway? There'll probably be another budget in March, so to speak, where you may expect more tax cuts?
There'll be a spring statement or a budget in March. Of course there will be. But you've still got to manage the economy, no matter whether there's election coming or not. And of course we want to do things that are popular with the electorate. But that is managing the economy anyway. You want to take the people with you on whatever you want to do. So what you've got to do is tell the stories, tell it clearly, be transparent and say, this is why we're doing it, this is how we're going to afford to do it, and these are the benefits you're going to get if you get a Conservative government. We're the party, after all, that makes sure that we can afford the welfare nets that we provide. And we don't borrow to do that. We've cut the debt. We've cut the debt, as he said in the statement, by more than we ever imagined. We thought it was going to be 100%, it's now 91%, 92%, and it's going to remain at a lower figure. So that's how you afford these policies.
Not just the pre-election giveaway.
Not just a pre-election giveaway, it's managing the economy.
When do you think the election will be next year?
Now there's the $64,000
When would you
question.
like it to be?
Well, I think I don't mind actually when it's going to be. I do my bit for my constituency, as you probably know, that I'd made the decision really very early on in my career as an MP, not to be one that climbs the greasy pole and be a minister for this, that or the other, and PPS or whatever. I wanted to be a constituency MP. 2 reasons for that. One, because I was 65 or nearly 65 when I got elected. And do I really want to rush around carrying books and do all of that when I could be doing good work for my constituency? And the other reason, fundamentally, is I'd had a great career in another world entirely, and this is a job that I can do really well for my patch that I know so well. So I don't want to sort of half that. Having said all of that, if somebody came up with a junior ministry in culture, in the arts, in the performing arts, that's something I know a great deal about, having worked in it for 55 years. So I would say yes to that.
Well, I was going to get on to that because, the third area, I suppose, was also you being a fantastic sort of advocate and questioner in the culture, media and sports sector, particularly sitting on the Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee. Tell us about your time on the Select Committee. What have been the sort of inquiries that you've really enjoyed and really felt that the committee and maybe yourself have made a big difference?
Well, some of them have been really interesting. To a certain extent, it's pity that we dropped the digital part.
Right.
We're just CMS now, we're not digital culture and media and sport. Because when we were looking into the influence of digital platforms, Facebook, Twitter, etc., the influence of those platforms over elections, that was fascinating stuff. And we held the grand panel out in Washington, and we famously didn't get Mark Zuckerberg to appear before us. But we had the guys from Twitter, we had the guys from various other organisations, and it was really interesting. And on a lot of levels, a lot of these people who created these incredible platforms hadn't realised the Pandora's box they'd opened when they did it. They thought, and quite rightly, that they've created platforms for freedom of speech, which they've got. It means everybody has a voice. Sounds wonderful. But it then means that people get into echo chambers where they only hear certain kind of voices. And if you are clever and manipulative, you manipulate that to your own ends, and this can be awfully dangerous for democracy. So looking into that was absolutely fascinating. That's one aspect. The other things we've been looking at is the governorship of the BBC, impartiality of the BBC, etc. And only yesterday we were looking at women in sport. And there's another really interesting one, because since I've been a member of that committee, look what's happened to women in sport. We've had the Lionesses, the cricket team, all of that suddenly coming through. And unfortunately, the world of sport on television is an incredibly congested area. So, for instance, there's one little issue that came up yesterday. Since the 1960s, there's been this 3 o'clock blackout on television on Saturday afternoons, where you don't show Premier League games or whatever, because otherwise people won't go to their local clubs and the grassroots suffers. It is being mooted now that doesn't count anymore, so that what we can do is make a slot at, let's say, 3 o'clock, where it'll be women's sport. And if you have that slot, then people develop a habit after a period of time of knowing when to see that particular kind of sport. So although it's very congested, there are ways forward. But these are things that we're discussing. It is a really interesting committee.
I was going to say, and what do you think, have there been any particular reports or recommendations that you can really point to and think that A, the government adopted it, and B, made a tremendous difference?
Well, I can't really be specific without kind of looking at a list of them. But what I can,
a lot.
But a lot. What I can say is that we do send things off to the government. They do come back with recommendations, and they do adopt what we recommend. So
I know you're a Conservative MP under a Conservative government, but are there particular any areas you'd really like to see in the DCMS area that you'd like to see the government do, and you're maybe a little frustrated that they haven't really moved on, despite the fact you've been probably pushing it for a long time?
I'm a Conservative because I believe in the individual, and I believe in progressing individuals' hopes and desires and freeing people up to create wealth. Having said that, one of the issues that I think isn't natural to the Conservative way of thinking is to look after the arts. The line I always take, and it's slightly tedious to people who hear me bang on about this, is that our projection of soft power across the world is based on the English language. And since the time of Shakespeare, we have been regarded hugely powerfully across the world. People know Shakespeare. People know so many of our great playwrights, so many of our great actors. We created theatre in so many ways to be accessible for all. And when I was an actor, I went to all corners of the world, in the Far East, wherever, and they understood what British theatre means. Now, on the back of that projection, both through television, film and theatre, through all three medium, we can sell our way of life, and we can sell British values, and we must not ignore that soft power. It's so important. So we do it very well commercially, but because we are a relatively small nation, America, for instance, can make a movie for a domestic market, and all it has to do is sell it in the domestic market, but it will eventually get around the world. And it can be successful, can be commercial. But on the back of the power of the American film industry, we eat, I don't know, McDonald's crisps and drink Coca-Cola, McDonald's burgers and drink Coca-Cola. So, British power.
We've got a big film studios in the UK.
We do. We have the largest independent. We have the largest independent film studio at Pinewood, and Star Wars is being made there right now. We do. We have the best technicians. We have the best actors. We have a lot of draw. But guess what? We're selling American values from our film studios.
I want to ask you another question related to two other aspects to do with your seat and you personally and the arts, and that is around Brexit. Obviously, it was a long time ago, but I know that the arts there are a few issues such as for touring bands and things like that around Europe. What are your feelings on Brexit, looking back on all these years? Your constituency was famously, a very big Leave voting area. I believe you're more of a Remainer. But both more generally on Brexit and to do with the arts, where do you think we are?
And now we have to manage it. And of course it's thrown up many issues. One of them which you touched upon is cabotage and visas and so forth in other countries. So it's become impossible for, let's say, a rock band to go from the UK and then go to Germany, Italy, Austria, wherever, as freely as it used to. But it's got to be remembered that rock bands tour the world, not just Europe. And when I was working in Vienna, living in Vienna for a period of time, for instance, it was no problem. I just went there and worked. It was not an issue. But I also worked in Egypt, and I worked in the Far East, in China, and in the Gulf states as well, in the Middle East. And so, we can make these things work. But what we've done is we've put difficulties in the way. And one really good example, there are two great haulage companies, Matthews and Luckings, who haul theatrical productions around the world. Now, if they leave the UK and take their theatrical productions off to Germany, France, wherever, they now have to come back. Whereas German or French trucking companies can come here, pick up and just go forever.
So is that something the government are looking into?
It's something I'll keep shouting
Yeah.
about it, but it's something that needs to be looked at, because we must not cut off our soft power. I go back to that point again, and that's one of the issues over Brexit.
Let's move on to another subject close to your heart and mine too, on animal welfare. You've also really established yourself as one of the leading conservative advocates for animal welfare.
Me and Henry Smith. Yeah.
You and Henry Smith, absolutely. But I think it'd be fair to say that the government's now, I don't want you to defend the government, I know they've done some good things on animal welfare, but there's a lot more they could have done. And recently, I think it was the Kept Animals Bill last year, was effectively abandoned. Are you disappointed by your Conservative government?
Hugely disappointed by that. The abandonment of the Kept Animal Bill, I think, was a mistake. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I immediately went to Mark Spencer, who was the Minister at the time, and said, what's going on here? We said we'd do this, and it was all in line, ready to rock. And suddenly it was dropped, and it was about business. Now, he put the point, he said we could still do all the sections of the Kept Animal Bills, but we'll do it in piecemeal. Because in one way it leads to less opposition, less amendment coming from the other side, because you can do that. And I sort of get that. But I want to see action on this.
There's nothing in the King's speech.
It hasn't happened. But I want to see action on
that. And on fur as well, something we've talked about a lot.
We need to ban fur trade. I mean, in this country, we have, but you know,
Yes,
we still have. There's imports
yes,
and,
the import and the
it's
sale.
the imports and so forth. Yeah, we can still push for that, and I will still continue on that campaign. And there's a lot within the party that do that. You've got to find the space, the business space within the workings.
Within the workings of it, yes.
Yeah,
well, they've just had
government.
the private members' bill ballot, so who knows? They might hand out some bills there.
And I might get one.
You might get one. Oh, and there is, yes, the automatic handout bills, but that would be very helpful.
That would be very useful.
But we don't have much time for that.
We haven't.
Yeah.
We're looking at a year or so before an election. Who knows when?
Who knows when? Okay, my final question really is, as we draw to a close, is what would you make? You're going to be standing on the manifesto, Conservative Party manifesto. We've maybe covered it already, but what are the sort of 2 or 3 things you'd absolutely like to see in that manifesto that you could then be saying to your constituents, your voters? You know, we the Conservative Party have promised to do this. Here it is, written down. Elect me on the back of that.
Well, one is help our industries, which the Chancellor did a lot today,
Right.
particularly our small and medium enterprise. I've got a lot of hospitality in my constituency,
Okay.
so therefore
They had a good day today.
They had a good day today.
Yes, yeah.
So there's more of that to come.
Yeah.
So we've got to look at business rates, keep them down.
Yeah.
Let's encourage growth. We've had a terrible time with the pandemic and other things that have hit us. I mean, the story on on inflation is tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
We've more than completed the promise on that, halving inflation. We've more than done that. So this is good news. So I will stand on a manifesto of that. I will stand on a manifesto of defending our pensioners and our veterans, because Johnny Mercer made a really good case yesterday on that, and he's very strong on that. And fundamentally, for my constituents, we have been very fortunate recently to get some £78 million of investment coming our way, and the last tranche was a levelling up investment. We've got Town Centre Fund, we've got Levelling Up, 2 Levelling Ups, and I've had £18 million for Clacton Hospital, which has been transformative because we've got a community diagnostic hub. We mustn't take our focus off areas like mine. And I don't just keep it to Clacton, but what happens, because Clacton is in Essex, which is, quite rightly, an economic powerhouse. We punch above our weight in Essex.
Yeah.
But the coastal regions just get overlooked time and again.
Yeah.
And I see my task as ensuring that they are not. Yeah. I've won some battles here. As I say, I've got 78 million quid, which by Clacton standards is huge. Yeah. It's not just me, of course, it's the councillors and the other people who get involved. But I do bang the drum on that, and I want to keep doing that and make sure that we don't fall back again, because we have done in the past.
Do you think final question? Do you think
your final
my
question?
final question? Just one more thing. Do you think your Clacton residents will appreciate 2 areas? One for DCMS area. I wanted to ask actually very quickly about gambling, restrictions on gambling, and also on the government's attempt to ban smoking, generational ban.
Well,
do you think that will go down well with your residents?
I have no idea. I don't think it really gets much traction.
No.
Either of those 2 issues. The one on smoking, I'm afraid to say to the government and who anyone, I think it's nuts. Yeah. So a 14-year-old will never be able to legally buy tobacco, but a 15-year-old will. Yeah. So in years to come, there'll be a 45-year-old asking a 46-year-old to buy him a packet of fags. I mean, really? This is not not sensible politics.
There'll be vaping by then.
There'll be vaping, and now we've got a problem with disposable vapes. They're an ecological nightmare.
Right.
All over the floor. And I'm kind of in favour of vaping because although I'm not a smoker, I was many years ago. And nobody should smoke, and nobody should encourage smoking. And I do see vaping as a way to smoking tobacco. But as long as it's safer than tobacco, we've got to control it, yes. But I think we need to use it as a way to get people off rather than people on to the smoking habit.
Okay, all right. Well, I didn't mean for us to finish on health and smoking, but there we go. It's one of those issues. I think we'll leave it there. Giles, thank you so much. It was fascinating to hear so much of that, and good luck with the election when it takes place.
See where we go.
We go, and thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll be doing another of these in the future, but if anyone has any further questions about Giles, to put to Giles about any of those fascinating topics,
I will endeavour to answer.
Then he'll endeavour to answer them. Thank you.